everyone, today we're making the most delicious, melt in your mouth, soft rice flour flatbreads. These flatbreads are known as pathri in southern India. They're made across India in various states with various methods, but this is by far the softest, melt in your mouth flatbreads made with rice flour. Now for those of you that don't know, pathiri is a roasted rice flour roti or flatbread. It's made with roasted rice flour, and there's a process to doing it, and the perfect rice pathri should be light as a handkerchief and soft and smooth, and it's served with curry and coconut milk, and once you add the curry and coconut milk, it should melt in your mouth if it's perfectly made. So there are many versions of rice roti across India, but the Malabar pathri stands apart in its lightness and softness. So this video is intended for those who are looking to make the perfect rice pathri at home and haven't quite succeeded, or those who would like to learn about this new Malabar dish. So let's get started. Please bear with me, the video is long as it's intended to teach those who don't know how to make pathri, or these handkerchief light rice flour rotis. So let's get started. So to start off, we need a heavy base and wide-mouthed pot to boil some water to cook the rice flour in. We're adding 2.5 cups, which is 600 mils of water, and we want to bring this to a boil. And as we wait for the water to come to boil, we need to measure out our fine rice flour. Roasted rice flour is used for pathri, and there are different brands available at Indian stores that are specific to making pathri. If you can't find it, you can use the finest rice flour available. The rice flour, you need to bring it home and roast it. So you need to dry roast it in a non-stick pan. A wide non-stick pan is preferred, and you need to keep stirring and roast it until it smells really nice of the roasted rice flour without changing color. The rice flour should remain nice and white. So before that, you can ask your Malayali friends or any of your Indian friends if they know where to get pathri flour. It's available in many Indian stores, and that flour is specific to this need, and there are many brands, and some brands are better than others, but if you ask around, I'm sure you can find the perfect rice flour. So as the water comes to a boil, we're going to add 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt, as well as 2 teaspoons of oil or 2 tablespoons of coconut milk. Coconut milk often makes even softer pathiris, but if you are using coconut milk, make sure you serve them on the same day because they don't last as long as the ones that are made with oil. They tend to spoil faster. Here I've added 2 teaspoons of oil, and as soon as the water comes to a boil, we're going to add our rice flour. You don't want to let the water boil too long, as the quantity will be reduced and won't be sufficient for the amount of rice flour that we have measured. So we're going to add all the rice flour that we measured in one heap, and don't stir. We're not going to stir this until the water bubbles and boils over the top and almost covers all the flour. So you want to wait for that. And then you want a nice strong wooden ladle, and you're going to stir this briskly till all the flour is moistened with the water. As you start to stir, it is important to now reduce the heat. We're going to reduce the heat to low at this point and keep stirring till all the flour is moistened. As you stir, the dough will start to get tighter and heavier and more difficult to stir, which is why we need that strong, long wooden ladle. We need a long one because the heat is intense and you don't want to burn your hands from the heat of the steam. And you need a really strong one because the dough is so tight that you really need something to manage that. So the one I have is just perfect for this purpose. So once you reach this stage and all the flour is moistened without any dry patches of flour, we need to cover this with a tight lid. Turn off the heat at this point, cover with a tight lid and allow to sit for about 5 minutes to steam. You don't want the dough to cool more than 5 minutes. It still should be very hot because for the best pathri, the dough must be kneaded while it is still very hot. If you allow it to cool down, the dough will be dried out and it won't result in good pathiris. So after 5 minutes, we're going to knead this. And here I am sharing some tips with you. It's too hot to handle with your hands at this point, but you still need to knead it while it's so hot. So if you have a wet grinder or a stand mixer or a bread machine with a dough attachment, if you have any of these, you can add the dough while it's still hot, and these can help you to knead the dough till it's nice and soft and bouncy. If you don't have those, you can also use silicone baking sheets like you see here. Using this to knead the dough helps to mold the dough without exposing our hands to too much heat. And if you have none of these, a good option is using these heat-safe zipper bags that are used for steaming food. Since they're used for steaming food, they are food safe and heat resistant. You can put the dough in batches into the bag, zip it up, leaving a small gap for steam to escape, and then using a cloth to protect your hands from the heat, you can knead the dough very simply. This is an extremely efficient way to knead the dough while it's still hot. This is a tip that I picked up at my mother's catering service when she had one, before they got machinery to do the same job. So I hope this tip will be useful to some. And remember, you saw it first, and recipes are simple. So I barely kneaded this for 5 minutes, and you can see the dough is already soft and bouncy. We will take it out and knead all the batches together once more. By then, it will be cool enough to handle with our hands. Now you can see how smooth it is already. We would not have been able to achieve this if we tried with the really hot dough with our bare hands. So now I'm going to put all the dough into a bowl and knead it further. We want to make sure that there are no lumps, no cracks, and it's absolutely smooth and bouncy to the touch. It's still quite warm, but now it is manageable. After 5 minutes of kneading, we have a nice, soft, smooth dough. Now what you want to do is you want to roll this into thick cylinder shapes so that we can pinch off large lime-sized balls from this. Whenever you're working with pathiri dough, it's best to work as quick as possible. Don't leave the dough to rest and go off and do some other jobs, because the dough will get dry, and dry dough will cause brittle and cracked pathiris. So here I've rolled it out into 3 thick cylinders. This makes it easier to pinch off lime-sized balls. Remember that the dough must be kneaded really smoothly without cracks. If the dough does have cracks, it's harder to make smooth balls. Now the next step is to pinch off lime-sized balls, and we want to roll them into nice, smooth, crack-free balls like this. You need to pinch off a portion and roll between your palms to form smooth balls. Apply gentle pressure between the palms as you roll so that any cracks disappear and you get a smooth ball. I must emphasize again the importance of creating smooth and crack-free balls. This is essential if you want pathiris that aren't cracked on the edges. So do this with the remaining dough. At any point, if you find that your hands are getting sticky or tacky with the dough, you must rinse your hands and dry them really well and continue, because if you have dried bits of dough on your hands, you cannot get such smooth balls. So to make the pathiri, essentially we follow the following steps. First, we make the dough in the required amount of water. Then we knead the hot dough till it's smooth and crack free. And then we roll into cylinders. We pinch off the balls and make smooth balls. After we have all the balls, we press them into roti shapes using a chapati press. If you don't have a chapati press, you can also press them between two steel plates to get around. It doesn't have to be too big, just flatten it. And then we will roll them using a rolling pin on a surface dusted with rice flour. And then we will roast them. Now it's important that at each and every stage of the making of pathiri, you need to keep the dough covered. Dried out dough will cause the pathiri to be brittle and cracked. It won't be as perfect. So you do need to work as fast as possible without the dough drying out. Now it's always easier to roll out a pathiri if you have flattened them using a chapati press or a tortilla maker first. So we're going to use a chapati press here, and I have 2 sheets of plastic on both sides. This helps to get the pathiri flattened larger, as well as prevents it from sticking to the sides of the chapati press. So I just sprinkled a bit of water on the chapati press surface so that the plastic sticks to it. The other side is dry. We place a ball and we give it a press. You don't need to press too hard, just want to get it as round as possible. Now if you don't have a chapati press or a tortilla maker, you can always press this between 2 steel plates and you can get the same effect. So there are those who roast the pathiri straight from the chapati press, but the fact remains that rolled out pathiris are the best and most perfect and the lightest. You can't get that light quality if you only press them. So after pressing, we dip each of the pathiris lightly in a little rice flour. And then this step is optional, to use a cutter to cut round edges. This is not just to give a round finish, it is actually to get a more perfect puff when you roast the pathiris. So even later when you roll them, even if they're not perfectly round, they will perfectly puff. So now we're going to roll out each pathiri as far as we can go, as large as we can go, without any tears or cracks. Make sure that your surface is dusted. If you find the pathiris are sticking to the surface, just dust again lightly with flour. Make sure you don't use too much flour because it will cause the pathiris to burn and change color when you are roasting them later. So we continue to roll out our pathiri as far as it will go. It's quite thin, as you can see, and make sure there are no cracks or holes. If you want larger pathiris, you will need to take larger size balls to begin with. So we're going to repeat the processes: press, dust, trim, and roll. So here you can see how thinly the pathiris have rolled out. So we continue this with all of these, and you can stack up the pressed pathiris first and then roll one by one if this is easier for you. And during the rolling process, if you find that any bits of flour are sticking to the surface or to the rolling pin, you must scratch these off or scrape them off. Otherwise, your pathiris will start to stick to the rolling pin or to the surface. So now we can heat up our flat griddle pan or tawa to roast the pathiris. Once you get the griddle pan or the tawa nice and hot, it's better to bring it up to heat on a low heat and wait till it gets nice and hot, other than increasing the flame. You want to roast the pathiris on a low to medium flame for best results. Keeping the pan on a very high heat will cause them to get brown spots, and perfect pathiris need to be really white. So wait till you see some bubbles over the surface. As soon as you see bubbles all over the surface, you want to flip over and you will see that it pops up really easily. You can flip it over again if you like, it's not necessary. And each time you roast a pathiri, you need to dust off all the residual burnt flour on the griddle pan, otherwise your pathiris will start to get yellow or burnt in color. So as soon as you see bubbles all across the surface, you can flip it over. Don't wait too long, or as I said earlier, you will start to see the brown spots on the other side. There you have a nicely puffed pathiri. I usually do flip it over once more, just briefly. Don't forget to dust off the burnt flour each time. Sometimes if you find that the pathiri is taking a little while to puff up, you can press it gently with a kitchen paper towel. This will speed up the process. So we're going to do that with all the remaining pressed and rolled out pathiris. Here I've used a kitchen paper towel to gently press to help the puffing process. Also pressing with the spatula helps it to puff up nicely. Now after you roasted your pathiris, you can either spread them on a kitchen paper or baking sheets. You can spread them out till they cool off and then put them into a casserole, but I usually, if I'm serving them right away, I just put them straight into the casserole while they're still hot in the center of the casserole, and this keeps them nice, warm, and softens them even further. However, if you're making a really large batch, it's better to spread them out a bit and cool them before you put them into the casserole dish. So I hope you will try these methods at home. Here you saw a few that have cracked edges and a small hole, but as you can see, it's not much of a worry. It does pop up. So do let me know if you tried to make the pathiri and if you succeeded. I've tried to include all the tips that I can remember. The pathiri is great served with coconut milk and any curry, chicken curry, vegetable curry, mutton curry, anything goes. And here you see what happened when I increased the heat. I do get the brown spots when I increase the heat, so it's always better to roast them on a lower flame. If the flame is too low, however, you will notice that the pathiri the bubbles don't appear as quickly. So in that case, you will need to increase the heat, so adjust accordingly. And so yeah, I hope you enjoy the video. I know it's long, but it's for those who really do want to make good pathiris. And before serving them, sometimes in the Malabar region, we dip some of the pathiris in coconut milk so that they're nice and soaked and ready for eating. This is not necessary. So at our place, we usually have them with coconut milk and chicken curry. We first pour some salted, freshly pressed coconut milk over the pathiris, and then add curry according to taste. You can see how light these pathiris are, as light as a handkerchief. Some people also like to roll the pathiris after they've dipped them in the coconut milk and roll them up like this just prior to serving. Enjoy your pathiris with your family. Thanks for watching.